Hi guys, welcome to Book Reviews with Fee, and today we're going to be reviewing Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Sutanto. Now, Vera is an elderly woman who has this tea shop that she named Vera Wong's world famous tea house. Now, her name is Vera Wong, but being as shrewd as she is, she named her tea shop after Vera Wong because she's a more famous person. And she felt that would bring her in customers, which it does not, because her only customer is also an elderly man named Alex, who is taking care of his wife who has dementia. He comes into the tea shop every day to get, his same bit of tea and to have a little respite from taking care of his ailing wife. Well, Vera's also, a little lonely. She's an empty nester. Her husband has passed. She has a very successful son, Tilly. However, he is a lawyer and he is always too busy for her, and he never takes her advice. So, Vera she finds solace in her routine, until that routine is broken when she comes down one morning and finds a dead body lying in the floor in the middle of her tea shop. So she calls the police, there's an investigation, but when the police arrive, Vera has drawn you have a chalk outline of the body. She's drawn that, but in permanent marker, because she is an avid CSI fan and she knows how to solve murders. But nobody knows it's a murder. They just believe that this guy who's lying in the middle of her shop, the window by the door is broken. He broke into her shop and he collapsed. Well, that morning when the police are the next day, not that morning, Vera gets, these visitors who come into her shop, and she knows from CSI that the killer always returns to the scene of the crime. So that's when we get introduced to the other characters of the story. So Marshall is the name of the guy who's been murdered. Julia is Marshall's widow, and she has a little daughter named Emma who is a toddler but is still breastfeeding and has some behavioral, some kind of particular, like she's really clingy. We have Sana, who everyone has some connection to Marshall, but she introduces herself as someone with a podcast. Ricky is someone who's had an encounter with Marshall, a negative encounter with Marshall, and he shows up at the shop as well. And Oliver is Marshall's twin brother who also shows up at the shop. Now, Vera has this notebook and she's keeping like all this information and she's interviewing these people. And she decides, because the police are incompetent. Well, the police declare that it was I believe they thought it was a drug overdose or something like that, and it was cut and dry. But Vera knows that it's a murder. So she has decided to solve this murder on her own. And she has these 4 suspects, which are, Julia, Sana, Ricky, and Oliver. So then a bunch of shenanigans ensue, some misunderstandings. And it goes from Vera not believing that, well, not quite sure who the killer is, to the 4 characters now suspecting each other as perhaps being the killer. Although the police, initially said that it was not a murder. So I won't ruin it for you, but I will say that I really love the protagonist, Vera Wong. It just lets you know that this story is really about community and how the most unlikely characters can become friends and family based on, any type of circumstance within the world. Now, in terms of the writing style, I listened to this on Audible. I believe I may have had a different experience had I read, a tactile book. But listening to it on Audible, some the characters you could tell that they were written by one person. Like all of the characters are self-deprecating and they're always like, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, what a moron. You know, they are all very like self-deprecating. And so I'm like, well, I think, you know, I don't know if this is Sutanto's first novel or whatever, but I did see on Instagram that as of, what was it? February 2024. So it may be coming due release. This book is being made into a movie, which when I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be such a funny like movie. So I do recommend Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. I did have a little bit of qualm with some of the character development and the narrator's like voice choices. So, excuse me, I've been drinking tea. I actually ordered some like blue butterfly pea tea. I was inspired by Vera's description of all her exotic teas. However, like, so Vera has a strong Chinese accent and it works. I mean, that's where she's from. She's an older woman, but she learned about the TikToks, as she called it. And she tries to stay hip and modern. But for some reason, the narrator chose to give every other character, like Julia, who's a white woman, Sana, who is Indian, Ricky, who's from Indonesia, and Oliver, who's also of Chinese heritage. They all sound like 80s California Valley people. Like they should have been cast on Saved by the Bell. Like, oh my God, Ricky, why? And I'm just like, why does everyone talk like that? And they're from like different, not to say that just because your heritage is from a different country, you would have an accent of some sort, but I'm like, everybody sounded the same. But those are some picky things. So I don't know. I give it a 4 out of 5 and I definitely would recommend it. And I'm definitely going to see it when it comes to the big screen. Thanks. Let me know what you think about Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers.